Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for those of you who already joined this live stream since 1 hour ago. Woohoo! And today will be interesting, folks. As you probably see on my flyers, on my promotional flyer, there's not enough technical topics discussed in the Scrum team, and today we will discuss a topic that is more technical, since it has been a few years that I haven't touched the technical aspects of software development. I have called two beautiful people, really aspiring people that I admire so much. I have met Peter Götz in person when we attended the training. Well, actually, I attended his training at that time. He facilitated a DevOps training in Boston, and I kind of envy him. He made like software development looks like a piece of cake. Like every time I have technical issues during the training, he would just, that's very easy. So I have invited Peter and Thomas. They are currently based in Germany. So in their place right now, it's around 11 a.m. in Germany, Central Eastern Time, or UTC +1. While me, at the moment, I am currently based in Brisbane, Australia. So in my case, right now, it's 8 p.m. So if you hear my kids are running around, so forgive me, folks, because currently it's school holiday in Australia in Brisbane. So kids are staying up a little bit late than usual. Anyway, for those of you, we got 9 people as of now. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining. This will be really awesome. This will be really light. It will not be like really formal or serious. We will have a lot of jokes, a lot of dad jokes. Australians are well known for its dad jokes, so lighten up, folks. For some of us watching right now, it's already late at night, so we want this to be more casual than other webinar or other like Agile or Scrum live stream that you probably have already seen before. Anyway, folks, introduce yourself to the rest of the community, to the rest of the viewers here who are currently watching. So write down on the not Zoom. I've been using Zoom for too much. All right, on the YouTube chat window, your name, where are you located right now, and let us know what time zone would that be. My geography is really bad, folks. Sometimes I don't know, that city, where is that located in the map, what time zone it is. So, yeah, so... Oops, sorry, not that one. Right, so I'm supposed to... Yep, so write down, introduce yourself with the community on the chat window, YouTube chat window. I've been using Zoom for too much. What's your name? What time zone are you in currently when you are watching today's live stream? So we will see where people are watching today's live stream, and we will see the diversity of today's viewers. Currently, we've got 10 people already. All right. So, as you may have noticed, we started a little bit late because we were tackling technical issues, but it looks like my guests are ready, fired up to answer your tough questions about Scrum and DevOps. So I will bring them in, folks. I will bring them in. And here we go. We will bring them in. Let's give them a round of applause. Yes. On the right on your screen, Mr. Peter Götz. Yes. Give your hands of applause to Mr. Peter Götz. And on the left of your screen, sorry, Thomas, I think you're a bit chopped off a little bit. So if you can move a little bit to the center, Thomas. Yes, so people can see your handsome face. Yes, thank you. That's perfect. And on the on the left of your screen right now is Mr. Thomas Schisler. In a few more seconds, I will let them introduce themselves. They are quite respectful. Well, I really respect them for their technical capabilities, really pushing teams using Scrum, leveling up a lot of Scrum teams to the next level, not just using Scrum, but add additional complementary practices like DevOps. So let's ask Mr. Peter Götz to introduce himself to all of our viewers here. Take it away, Mr. Peter Götz.
So that should be pretty straightforward. My name is Peter. I'm a software developer, and together with Joshua and Thomas, I'm a professional Scrum trainer at Scrum.org, and my hobbies are software development and DevOps.
Wow, software development is a hobby. For me, I used to make it as a job, but Mr. Peter here make it as a hobby. So you can see how he makes software development looks easy. Thank you, Peter. And my next guest, he is on the left of your screen right now, folks, Mr. Thomas Schisler. Yay! Take it away, Thomas.
Yeah, welcome from my side as well. So I'm Thomas. I'm also a software developer, really passionate about technical stuff. I really love to make things. So I have a 3D printer, laser cutter. I love to build electronics for my smart home improvements and those kind of things. And yeah, part of this, like Peter already mentioned, we all doing trainings around Scrum, DevOps, this kind of things, coaching organizations and teams, helping them to do better software development there. And yeah, that's it.
Oh, thank you, Thomas. Yay! Okay, one thing, these two folks are quite humble, you see. One thing that they didn't mention, they actually maintain the curriculum of applying professional Scrum for software development at scrum.org, folks. Yes. So besides what they have mentioned, they also maintain the curriculum for Scrum.org, applying professional Scrum for software development. Okay, let's carry on. Let's not waste any more time. Our topics today is Scrum with DevOps. Yes, Scrum with DevOps. And I want to pick this topic. Some of you, our viewers, probably already watch the video on my channel about Scrum with DevOps. Interestingly, if you go to my channel, folks, that video has the highest views compared to all of my other videos, like coaching, product backlog management. The Scrum with DevOps has really a lot of views. I think as of now, around 12,000 views, which is really interesting. So before the Scrum Guide 2020 was updated, there is this understanding, there is this perception from several technical people, several highly respected people in the industry. I can pick a name, probably like Jess Humble and Dave Farley. Those are the folks who write the book Continuous Delivery. They want to push forward, agile beyond just Scrum, beyond just delivering releasable increments every sprint. They're pushing like continuous delivery. And there are some perception that in the DevOps community, in the DevOps movement, that Scrum is not agile enough because the requirement in Scrum is having releasable increments. And in some organizations, Scrum and Sprint, to be more specific, is treated like a compressed waterfall where teams, they do requirements gathering, they do design in the very first few days of the sprint, then coding, and nearer the end of the sprint, probably a few days before the end of the sprint, testing is done, whether that's UAT or system testing. So it looks like a mini waterfall. So a lot of people who are very technical, and I highly respected, think that Scrum is not really agile enough. So we see in the latest Scrum guide, now that barrier has been removed. It's boldly written. It's explicitly written now in the Scrum Guide 2020. Multiple increments can be delivered multiple times in a sprint. So if you are using DevOps with Scrum, you're doing DevOps practices, or you're doing continuous delivery, or maybe not just continuous delivery, continuous release to production multiple times in a sprint, that does not really conflict with Scrum. And now in Scrum Guide, it's specifically written that the sprint review is not a phase gate event. If you want to release before the sprint review, go ahead. It's really encouraged, right? So now it seems that the community, Scrum community, DevOps community wants to push this forward. Let's level up the game. However, though, I also found out that several people also still have misunderstanding about DevOps itself. Interestingly, not only Scrum is misunderstood, DevOps itself is also misunderstood. So I have brought Peter and Thomas, and we will have a conversation, folks, throughout the next hour. It will be light conversation. There's not much from us that has been prepared. We are here to help you, to give you insights, to help you level up the game. If you're using Scrum right now, let's level up the game. And I brought Peter and Thomas here to attend to your questions. And before we get there, for those of you who haven't written down, I can see 14 viewers right now watching this live stream, folks. This is really awesome. It looks like there's high enthusiasm, people in learning beyond just Scrum. So if you have joined us, folks, write down your name on the chat window and also the time zone you're currently watching today's live stream. That would really help me improve my geography, folks. Now we got Ricard watching from Sweden, UTC +1. Welcome, Ricard from Sweden. And we also got Hasrul from Jakarta, UTC +7. I think it's around 5 p.m. at where you're located now, Hasrul. All right, folks, if you have just joined, don't forget to write down your name and time zone where you're watching today's live stream, folks. So now I want to toss this questions. This is something that both of you are passionate about, but I'll probably ask Thomas first. What is DevOps from your perspective? Because there is some perception. DevOps is tools. DevOps is Jenkins or just CICD, right? So what is DevOps? There is a lot of misperception about this. Take it away. Thomas, what's your perspective about this?
So I think, in my opinion, DevOps is all you just mentioned and so much more. So what I personally really like is to use the 3 ways of DevOps to explain that there are various perspectives of looking at the situation, at software development, at how we release software, and why we actually want to increase the frequency of releasing our software. And for me, the 3 ways are a really powerful way to look at this topic.
Okay.
And if you want, we can dig a bit deeper into the 3 ways, but just see if there is interest.
Yeah, I think it would be good to cover it. Probably we won't go in depth. Probably that's going to take some time to explain. Probably like the highlight. What is a 3 ways? I think some people may not have heard of 3 ways. Would you like to elaborate more on that, Thomas, on the 3 ways, DevOps 3 ways? Do you want me to switch? All right.
Yes.
So, yes.
I can probably
DevOps 3 ways.
share some visualizations, and maybe Peter can help me in explaining it, because I'm not really good in drawing and talking at the same time. So
that's good. So let's do it like we try to do it in our trainings. So what we typically have in organizations is organizations focus on improving the efficiency of what they are trying to accomplish. And in the example of software development and software operations, we have that as the dev and the ops part of DevOps. And so what we typically try to do is, on the first way, we are trying to improve the flow of work from left to right. So we are really trying to improve the effectivity of the value creation chain. And to be honest, it does not start with dev and it does not end with ops. We should have a look at the complete value creation chain from the customer's need until the customer's, let's say, excitement. That would be the first way, improve flow of work, and we are trying to understand the system as a whole, systems thinking. The second way of DevOps is all about feedback. It's called Amplify Feedback, and what we are trying to do is we are trying to install and reinforce feedback loops throughout the value creation chain. First and foremost, this might be the feedback loop back from ops to dev, and even before that. But we also want to create, just like Thomas visualized, smaller feedback loops in the middle. So wherever feedback can help us realize some mistake or some error or create some learning for us earlier, we should do that. That's the second way of DevOps. In the third way of DevOps, what we are trying to create is we are trying to create an environment where experimentation is risk-free and we can create learning with every step. So we are trying, and this is a cultural topic, so we are trying to create a culture of continuous experimentation and learning. What that means is we are trying, I mean, Thomas and I, we are Germans, and the Germans are really good at trying to get it right first time. So what we are usually trying to do is we try to avoid failure, we try to avoid error. And by avoiding that, what we create is we create an environment where if an error occurs, it is sometimes hazardous. It is really, really bad if something goes wrong. And on the third way, what we are trying to do is we try to create an environment where we can make errors because they will not have catastrophic results. And we want to learn from those errors. So we are trying to go in a hypothesis-driven, experimentational way of learning. So that's basically the 3 ways of DevOps.
Okay. When I look at this brief explanation, I actually cannot find anything that is conflicting with Scrum. In fact, I think Scrum have some aspects of this. From what I can see, feedback. Scrum, I think, is about feedback. The daily Scrum is about feedback. Sprint review, sprint retrospective is about feedback. Scrum talks about learning. Retrospective is about learning. So I suppose the 3 ways has already been covered with retrospective itself, even though now in Scrum Guide, it's mentioned that if you can come up with improvements before retrospective, don't wait until the retrospective to make those learnings happen. But I'm interested now with the first way. I think at a glance, Scrum may not really explicitly touch the first way. What are some examples of the DevOps first way from your experience, Peter and Thomas?
So maybe I can take a stab on it, and then Thomas can rectify anything that I got wrong. So when I think about the first way and Scrum, what comes to mind for me is the idea of a cross-functional team. When I started in software development 20-something years ago, what we had was we had software development teams consisting of people who did write code. We worked with requirements engineers, we worked with testers, we worked with people who did system administration and the operations part, but we were mainly concerned with our software development thing. We worked in cycles of 6 months upward, and after 6 months we tried to get our stuff into production. That was how I was working in the companies I worked there. With the idea of Scrum and the cross-functional team, we tried to include people who were part of that value creation, and we tried to look to the left and to the right. The first people that we introduced and we included were the testers, at least in the teams that I was working with. Afterwards, we were introducing the people who were doing UI, UX, graphic designers, and stuff like that, database administrators, architects, software architects. And so what we were trying to do is we were trying to make the cross-functional and our idea of cross-functionality broader and broader. And so, in my opinion, the first way of DevOps is exactly the culmination of this cross-functional team, thinking the whole system and not only a part.
Oh,
Thomas,
wow.
what's your take on that?
And just to add another thought, for me, probably the core concept in Scrum is this idea of done, to really build something that is releasable in a software context. In a Scrum guide, we call it usable. And I think the basic idea here also in DevOps is that we can really amplify those feedback loops when we put things into the hands of our users, because that will be the ultimate truth. Everything we do before is steps helping us to understand where we are and where to identify problems early. But the ultimate truth is when our users start using a new functionality, a new feature, or whatever. And therefore, the idea of done, to really have something in short cycles that is releasable, that is usable by our users, that's the core concept. And for this, for example, in Scrum, what we do is during backlog refinement, we try to split our PBIs into smaller chunks to have a smaller part, which is already providing a smaller value to our users, which we can then use to gather the feedback, which the second way is all about.
Oh, wow. That is mind-blowing to me. Like, it never came to my mind that having cross-functional team is actually to improve the flow of value from left to right. I've taken that quite lightly, but I think it makes sense, because having a cross-functional team, you're removing bottleneck, you're removing waiting time, because you have got all of the skills there. You don't need to hand over, you don't need to toss over, and there is no kind of tossing back and forth. Is that basically what the first way is all about? Correct me if I'm wrong here.
I think I agree, and I would even broaden that. It's the idea of collaboration. It's the idea that I, as a person, sometimes am less efficient in what I'm doing, but we as a team are more effective in what we are doing. So it might be that I give you an example, a concrete example. Yesterday I was working on getting stuff to run in the Google Cloud. It is a new type of application, and I was trying to get it run in the Google Cloud. It took me longer than it would have taken a Google Cloud specialist. But the problem is, if I would have waited for a Google Cloud specialist to join the team or to be present or to be available, then I might have worked on something with high efficiency, but the overall effectivity of our team would have been diminished. And so I did something that was not part of my core expertise in order to get something done, instead of doing something within my part of expertise that would, if we put it drastically, that would have been just done work or work that has been finished, that I put on the pile of stuff to be released. And this is what, in my opinion, the first way is all about. We are trying to get stuff done.
Okay, interesting. So I guess the tools in the DevOps practices like automation, continuous integration, what is it, Puppet or Chef, those tools is actually to fasten the flow of value from left to right. But the essence is not about the tools. The essence is about how can we move this backlog, this work from left to right faster. And there are many ways to achieve that. And I think Thomas also mentioned about slicing your product backlog items as thin as possible, because by having a thin product backlog items, the cycle time would be shorter, the flow from left to right would be shorter. Okay, is there any other practices for the second way that is not explicitly mentioned in Scrum, especially in Scrum guides? The second way is about feedback. When we look at it, Scrum is all about feedback. Daily Scrum is about feedback. Sprint review is about feedback. I think in fact even the sprint planning is about feedback. Product backlog refinement is about feedback. Now, if we complement DevOps, is there any other DevOps practices that amplify feedback beyond the default from Scrum, from your experience, Peter and Thomas?
I would like to start it off because there is something that you broached upon a few times, and I would like to hammer that point.
Feel free to do that.
Because one thing, and you talked about the misunderstandings. You talked about the misunderstandings of only being able to release by the end of the sprint or having a releasable increment by the end of the sprint. Scrum as a framework describes the minimum, the bare minimum that a Scrum team has to be able to do. They have to be able to do at minimum to create one usable or releasable increment of product by the end of the sprint. They have to, at a minimum, come together as a team to have a look at how they are doing in regards to the sprint goal in the daily Scrum. At a minimum, they have to sit together with stakeholders to get feedback on the done increment. But Scrum, you can do so much more. You do not have to stay with the minimum, and that's why doing it more often and having shorter cycles, having more feedback, just like in the second way of DevOps. I think that is, and it was always, part of Scrum. And now the real answering, Thomas can do that.
So I just want to pile up on this. So in my perspective, what we have is we have, at least in a software context, we have two parts of feedback, or two areas of feedback. The first one is probably what the Scrum framework is really focusing on. It's the feedback in regards of the business value we are creating with our product. But I think what is also really important is something I'd like to call technical feedback. So if you change a line of code and you start the compiler, you immediately get feedback of what you've written here can be compiled or not. That's probably one form of a feedback, a very, very early feedback. if you run your unit test, this is also a feedback, but it's more a technical feedback. It doesn't tell you if it provides value to your users, but it's also really important feedback in terms to understand, can we release what we have just written here? All the tools you mentioned with build and release pipelines, this is a form of technical feedback, code reviews from your peers. So I think what we should not do is to say, okay, we just do what the Scrum framework tells us, but as Peter just mentioned, complement this with additional practices to have a much broader perspective, a much broader feedback area we can cover, because the question is, why do we want to have this feedback? And the reason, in my opinion, for the feedback is to minimize the risk that we are investing in the wrong direction, that we are avoiding late surprises. I think that's when I look back at the days when I really was part of waterfall projects. The big problem we had there is that we did a lot of planning, then we did a lot of development, and at the end we did the testing phase. And this was the moment when all the surprises popped up. So estimating how long testing will take was, in hindsight, was completely unrealistic, because this testing phase, what we did is we estimated how long will it take us to execute the tests, but that's probably just a very small part of this phase, because when you do testing and you find bugs, you will have to fix those bugs, you will have to retest the thing. And the length of this phase depends very much on how many surprises you find there, how many things pop up then. So we had the thing with the highest uncertainty at the very end of our project, which is kind of crazy, right? And that's what we try to do different in a Scrum context, to have those surprises early, ongoing. Ideally, as you mentioned, Joshua, at the very beginning, we also not want to have those surprises at the end of the sprint, because we do, again, planning and then some development. And at the end of the sprint, we start testing the stuff. We are integrating the different things together and having the surprises at the end of the sprint. We want to do this more continuously to avoid those kind of surprises, and surprises in regards of technical issues, as well as feedback from potential users, from product owners, from stakeholders, from whomever. The earlier we can integrate this feedback, we can get this feedback, the more we are able to reduce the risk that we have over-invested in an area where we then find out that this probably doesn't make any sense.
Oh, wow. That's really revolutionary. That's really something new for me, because a lot of engineers always see that test-driven development or writing unit tests as a burden. We're like adding extra code, like adding more time. But what you just mentioned there, it's a new perspective. Doing tests more often increase the feedback loops. By having more feedback, you're minimizing risk. And those surprises is actually expensive, because you may do rework, and like you may like put the gaps, just cover the hole for those gaps. If you do feedback more often, like doing TDD or writing unit tests early and often, you're lowering down the risk of having those surprises near the end of the project. That's really interesting. That's really new to me. I've never seen it from that perspective. And hopefully everyone who watched this live stream or the recorded version after they watch this, probably they should have a better understanding about what's the purpose, what's the benefit of doing TDD or doing tests more often. Not just testing at the end of the sprint, but do it more often throughout the sprint. Thank you for that. That's really interesting. So TDD
Joshua, can I step in here, because
Sure.
there is one thing I would like to add.
Sure.
Because the two things that you just brought up, they belong very tightly together. So what we are trying to do with Scrum and with agile product development is we are trying to navigate unknown terrain. So we are trying to figure stuff out that we have not yet figured out in the past. And so what we have to do if we are navigating an unknown terrain is we have to look at the map more often. We have to look around us more often. And many companies I see, they try to cover the ground as fast as possible. And the only thing they do with that is they run as fast as possible in the wrong direction. When I was in the army, and I know old men shouldn't talk about their time in the army, but I will nonetheless because I'm an old man. So when I was in the army and we were trying to navigate unknown ground, we were looking at the map quite often. We were not really fast, but we were trying to not go into the wrong direction too long. And this goes back with the second part. So now we have smaller feedback cycles. We try to do stuff more often and in a cyclic way. And because we have to do them more often in order to not run into the wrong direction for too long a time, we have to find ways to optimize our ways of working with errors. And automating stuff is exactly that. Automating stuff reduces the amount of manual labor, and it reduces the amount of error that can happen while doing things manually. If you are testing your systems manually for a couple of weeks after a 12-month development cycle, that's bearable. You can just live with that. But testing your stuff completely for a few days or weeks in a cycle that's 2 weeks long, that's not feasible. And so you need automation as an enabler to cover the ground in a more risk-free or in a less risky way.
So to be in your analogy, Peter, if unfolding the map takes you 10 minutes, you cannot have a look at the map every 5 minutes. That's not feasible, then you will not walk at all. So, and that's what the first way of DevOps is all about, to understand how can we improve our way, how we create software. And with TDD and other things that are regarding to testing, you just mentioned some of them. I'd like to really emphasize that there are so much more things that we can do to build a quality product. Peter already mentioned the cross-functionality of a team, the education, not having too much stress, understanding where are our highest risks, having enough time to refactor our code to reduce complexity. All those kind of things can also help to build the quality into the product and to allowing us to deliver in shorter cycles. And this is exactly what the first way is all about, to identify potentials, opportunities, how we can improve. And that probably also answers a question we had on the chat. So about the job of a Scrum Master in a DevOps environment, it could be exactly this, helping the team understand those opportunities where we are struggling today, what is holding us back in releasing more frequently, and how can we adapt our way of working to become more efficient in this, more flexible, more agile, basically, in delivering stuff.
So from your explanation, can we say automating, whether automating the test, automating the deployment, can we say that's both the first way because it will speed up the flow from left to right, but it's also the second way because you're amplifying feedback, because if you do test more often, if you automate your test, you can do test more often, and if you do test more often, you're increasing feedback. You know how is the quality of your code. Can I say that? Like automating are both the first way and the second way?
And you could even say that it's the third way, because by having an automation and having a test harness, or having let's say having an environment where errors come up very quickly and after a very small batch of change, creates an environment in which fixing that change is really simple, because maybe you only have to go back 10 minutes in time. And during those 10 minutes, nothing much has changed. So you can fix the error quite easily. And that's quite interesting when it comes to practices. It is very, or even to tools. Many of these tools and many of the practices that we use help us walk on all the three ways. And that's why Thomas and I, we are really trying to focus on the three ways, because often we see people who say, okay, we need to have a CI/CD build pipeline. And then the question is, okay, why? Yeah, because we are working in an agile way. We are working with DevOps. Yeah, but why are you wanting a CI/CD build pipeline? So the reason we are doing things agile is not the reason for having a CI/CD build pipeline. But if they answer because we want to have faster feedback on how we integrate stuff, that's a great answer. If they say we want to improve flow from our development teams to our testing teams to our operations teams, that's great feedback. We want to know early of an error that occurs because we want to fix it very quickly. That's a great answer. And this is an answer that walks on the three ways. It's not about the tool. Suddenly it's about the culture and the continuous improvement of our process.
That's really, really interesting. Now automating is actually hitting all of the three ways. And because now we are talking about the three ways. Is there any other DevOps practices that Scrum team should consider beyond just retrospective? Most Scrum teams, their learning probably only happens during retrospective. Would you suggest any other practices, DevOps practices that amplify learning that all Scrum teams should consider, should embed into their Scrum practices? What are your thoughts?
So I think we could talk for hours about those kind of practices that are available there. Probably let me first start with that. I think that that's the importance of the third way, because this establishes the environment, that the groundings to not only find but also to take those practices into reality and to really start using them. Because what the third way should achieve is we need to have safety, to make people comfortable to experiment and learn new stuff. And I would again say that there are two types of safety. It's the psychological safety, and well, probably Scrum Masters talk about this a lot. So it's a very common theme that people feel safe enough to try out things that they are sure they will not get punished if something gets wrong, all those kind of things. But I think it's important to complement this with technical safety, what Peter already mentioned. So if we deliver something bad into production, how easily can we fix this once we figure it out? So I, for example, know a team, they had a huge red button in their team room, and each time they pressed the red button, it took just a couple of seconds, and the latest change was rolled back automatically. If you have a thing like this in place, I bet you are much more comfortable in building something, just pushing it to production, and hopefully you have great monitoring, which tells you immediately if there's a problem, you press the button and the problem is gone immediately. That creates much more freedom to experiment with things compared to situations where it takes probably days or even weeks to deliver a new version to your clients, where probably your clients decide if they want to install an update or not. Then if you don't have an influence on this, you have to make sure that everything is really, really safe once you deliver it. And then you are exactly in the situation where you try to make those releases as rare as possible. Then you are in this 6 months release cycles or even longer. And this is exactly what the third way should help us to build an environment where it's easy and safe for us to run those experiments. And this again then helps with the feedback loops, because then we are in much better situation just to try out things, get the feedback. Do our users like it? Don't they like it? If they don't like it, we remove it. This is much more agile way, more based on hypotheses and validation of those hypotheses.
There's a lot of benefits, it seems, that Scrum teams can reap by doing the practices from DevOps 3 ways. So let's ask the audience now whether they have any questions for you both. So now we have covered DevOps 3 ways. We touch on several practices that improve the flow from left to right, which is the first way, and some practices that amplify feedback from right to left, and some practices that amplify learning. If I'm not mistaken, I think several people from the DevOps community also said that mob programming can amplify learning. Because then everyone would know the code base together. So they will have a shared understanding. They will learn together about how the code should be. And I also heard about blameless postmortem. I think it's related with what you just mentioned. Basically, people won't get punished if something bad gets shipped to productions. So let's ask the audience now. Folks, if you are watching right now, you can ask Peter and Thomas in the chat window, and they will happily answer any question in relation with Scrum with DevOps. I think we've got early questions, if I go up to the top, from Ben, who has been waiting since 1 hour ago. What are the day-to-day activities of a Scrum Master in a DevOps context? What do they do in that kind of context? Probably, if I may add some more there, do you still need a Scrum Master when the team are already practicing all of these DevOps practices? It seems like you already have like an awesome team, right? Like a superstar teams, like they're continuously releasing, they're optimizing flow, they amplify feedback, they do learning quite a lot. It's a psychologically safe team. What does the Scrum Master role do in that kind of context? It seems like I would say a nirvana.
I would argue that this becomes very clear if we switch contexts. So let's for 1 second not talk about a product development team or a software product development team. Let's talk about a rugby team. I guess New Zealand is not so far away from Brisbane, and so the All Blacks. I think the All Blacks are one of the most famous and the best rugby teams in the world, right?
Yes, the All Blacks.
Do they have a trainer, or do they even have a trainer team, maybe?
Of course.
Yeah, the question is why. They are an awesome team. They know how to do stuff right. And even though, and I would argue because they are so awesome, they need awesome trainers. And the trainers, they are not there to teach them how to catch a ball, or how to throw a ball, or to kick a ball, or how to tackle people. The trainers are there to provide the outside perspective. They are there to help them understand where room for improvement still is. And this, in my opinion, is one part of being a great Scrum Master. And I would argue that awesome teams need really awesome Scrum Masters. Because if they would, you cannot, as you said, you cannot improve an awesome team by asking one clever question every now and then. But you have to really provide them with an outside perspective that helps them self-improve, that helps them realize where gaps are, that helps them fix those gaps on their own. And that's why I think the more mature the more improved a team becomes, the more mature and the more improved the Scrum Master has to be.
And that probably goes also into the question we have in the chat. Does then a DevOps team need a DevOps master? To be honest, I don't really care about those titles and those kind of things. I think Peter just mentioned the biggest important point here is that the team is self-improving, that the team identifies opportunities where we can learn new things, where we can get better, what are potential issues we are having here, and work on those issues. I personally found it much easier if we have a person that can take more a look from a distance to it. So if you are directly involved in doing the work, you probably cannot see some of those things. So a person taking a step back and trying to observe more the system as a whole and taking the time to do this kind of observation and then mirroring back to the team and say, hey, look, that's what I've seen. So is there anything you think we should do about this? If not, then I'm fine with it. But if, then probably let's talk about it and let's find out how we as a team can grow. And I think that is really beneficial. If you call such a person a DevOps master, Scrum master, a coach, whatever, I don't really care about this. But I think taking the time to improve yourself, that is one of the fundamental points here, which we want to achieve.
Yeah, I think we get hung up with names too often rather than the value that person can provide. I really like the perspective from Peter, how a Scrum Master in that kind of awesome team is bringing a different perspective. It reminds me of one of the greatest tennis player, Serena Williams, when I read about her biography. The coach that she hired was actually not much better than her, or not like a superstar or ex-superstar tennis player. By the record on the book, Serena Williams is better than this coach that she hired. But interestingly, this coach was able to drag Serena Williams out of her comfort zone, doing some things that she was not comfortable or were afraid to do before. And I really like that perspective. The Scrum Master in that kind of context is challenging, like nudging the team, like bringing a different perspective, asking difficult questions to help the team level up their game. I really like that perspective. And I think you also already answered the question from Hasrul Thomas. And there's another question here from Pavel. What is the most advanced DevOps team that you have seen in your career, in your experience? Like the most awesomest, like how does that look like? What have they done, right? And what do you think the other team should aim for Scrum teams? Where should they aim, right? After this, after Scrum, what's next? What should they aim? Right.
So I would say that, again, like in other situations, each team is different. So it's probably not that you try to copy what other teams did, but still, I think we can provide some more generic patterns here. And Peter, I know he has a lot of experience in this field as well. What I really like is that for great DevOps teams, I would say a release is a non-event. So I've worked with teams and they worked on some stuff for several sprints, and after a couple of sprints, they did a release. And for the sprint after the release, they cleared the complete sprint because they knew there were so many issues coming up after the release, so they will have no capacity to work on something else. They just have to spare all the capacity to fix the issues after the release. People are afraid of doing releases. So people try probably to take a couple of days off around the release because that's probably the most stressful part of their work. And I think that is exactly what really great DevOps team do. They release all the time, so it's nothing special. It's like you eating food all day, so you're not celebrating each time you just eat food and say, hey, that's amazing, that's great. So make it a non-event, and that probably helps you to identify what makes releases so special, what makes a day where we release different to another day. And this will probably show you where you have opportunities to improve. Peter, what do you think?
What you said there, Thomas, it reminds me of a quote from Jess Humble, the author of Continuous Delivery book. For teams who does DevOps, releasing should be as simple as releasing with one finger and drinking mojito, holding mojito on the other hand. It should be as simple as that. If you cannot reach that level, probably releasing is still painful. There's probably still a lot of room for improvements. It just reminds me of that quote from Jess Humble. That was really thought-provoking. Releasing should be as simple as drinking mojito on one hand and then just clicking with one single button, released. What's your thought, Peter? What's the most awesomest? I'm not sure if awesomest is even a word. The most awesomest DevOps teams you have worked with. What have they done? What did they do?
And I would cut in the same line as Thomas, because I don't think I can say the most awesomest, and I like the word awesomest team. So I think it all depends on the perspective. So I'm currently working with a team, and they're still quite junior. So they're not very experienced senior developers, but what they are really good at is they are very gentle with each other. They are very friendly with each other. They are very eager to learn, all of them, and they are eager to learn from each other. They are eager to teach each other, and so this is one team I worked with where this aspect of work works best. I've worked with other teams who were very specialist and experts in technology. They really managed to work with all the technology in a very, very straightforward and successful way. And so these kinds of teams, maybe these kinds of teams were a bit rougher than the team I'm currently working with, but they were very effective in using that technology. Again, other teams, I would say they have done very beautiful and strict practices. They have worked with extreme programming practices. They have worked with very nice retrospectives. They have really tried to get the things right that they are doing. But maybe sometimes they have overcomplicated things because they were trying to do them the right way. And so no matter which of these perspectives or which of these aspects I put into the foreground, I would select a different team. And as Thomas, I would not try to find the best team that does all of the things right. In my opinion, it's always the self-reference. So compared to last week, compared to last sprint, compared to last year, have we improved? And I can use the worst teams that I've worked with and I've worked in really bad teams myself. I think I have been a very bad developer myself sometimes. If in such a team we can say we improved from really, really bad to just really bad, I think that's better than the most awesomest team that are not the most awesomest, but only the awesomest anymore.
So there is a quote, one of our viewer quoted you, Peter. People are afraid of doing releases. Make it a non-event, like eating. You're eating every day. So releasing should be unpainful. Is that even a word? I create a lot of non-English, but sorry for those of you who are English speakers here. Make it less painful, like eating. You do it every day. Releasing should be something done in a non-event. It should be continuous. So from what you have explained there, we shouldn't set like an aim, because then we would probably be too satisfied. To touch your point there, Peter, we can always be more awesome than yesterday. So that encourage us to continuously improve. And I think that's the spirit of the DevOps the third ways, right? Amplify learning, right? If we make it an aim, we probably don't bother to learn or to challenge ourselves to level up the game even further. Really interesting there. All right.
Probably
so,
I can.
Okay, take it away,
Probably I
Thomas.
can make an example for the second way, because I think this is the way we have not touched yet. So I've worked with teams that were really aware of what is going on in their application right now. So they had monitors all over in the offices, and when they have released a new functionality, a couple of minutes later, they were seeing if users were start using this new feature. They had really this kind of feedback. And I have worked with teams, they just released stuff, but they had no idea about the impact those features had on their users, if they were used at all. So the only feedback line they had was when people called their support service, and the support people then contacted the developers because they were stuck with some issues. That was their own problem. So if there was no feedback from the support people about a specific feature, you still didn't know, is it working that perfectly so nobody is calling support for it, or nobody is using it? So still two possibilities could be true there. And I think really great DevOps teams, they really have great insights about what's going on in their application, in the perspective of how users use this software, as technically, is it functioning well? Are we having any issues? Are we running out of memory or whatever? Are we having too long latency times? This kind of things.
Well, we're nearer the end of our live stream today. It seems like DevOps is a culture. I know culture is a wishy-washy word. It's really ambiguous, and I think it's overused. But it seems like from our conversation in the past hour, it seems like a habit, if I may say, right? Improving the flow from left to right, amplify feedback, amplify learning. It's like a habit, and you may add tools to get into that habit. And because it's a habit, it's actually not conflicting to Scrum. It's actually leveling up Scrum teams to the next level. What's your thought? I know culture is a bit wishy-washy, fuzzy, and vague, but it seems like that. Or do you have any other perspective, or do you disagree with me? What's your thoughts?
I absolutely agree, Josh. And I would like to add that culture is not to be changed like that. So I cannot go into a company or into a team or into an organization and change the culture there. What we have to start with is we have to reflect on what we do on a daily basis. If we want to have our culture changing, and the organizations I usually work with, they want to change towards a more agile and a more empirical culture. We have to start by doing stuff differently, and this can start anywhere. You can start with the most pressing, with the most easy, with the most difficult problem that you have. It doesn't matter. As long as you start to change something, as long as you try to improve one little bit, and with every improvement, as it doesn't matter how small it is, with every improvement, it becomes easier and the system becomes better. And this better system is the culture. And so culture is not something, I do not send people to culture workshops. I do not send people to trainings to learn about that. What we need to do is we need to do it. We just need to start somewhere.
Especially if
probably
you emphasize the third way, amplify learning, you may discover practices for the first way, for the second way. A lot of practices may emerge along the way. You want to say something, Thomas?
Yeah, I just want to emphasize what Peter just said in so many words. And probably that is relieving for some people as well. In my opinion, as soon as you try to become better in the terms of the three ways, you are doing DevOps. So it's not that you have to apply those practices and then you are a DevOps team or not. If you start to become better, you're doing DevOps. It's that simple.
One last question. This one is from Hasrul. You can probably answer this quickly. Do we need to plan our transformation to DevOps?
I would say no. You
just start doing it.
Peter mentioned, identify your best opportunity, your most pressing problem, and start improving. Then you're doing DevOps, and then you identify the next thing. I like the metaphor of if you're having a lake and there are some rocks in it, and you are lowering the level of the water, you identify some rocks. Then you stop lowering the water and remove those rocks. And then you continue lowering the level of water again and see where are other rocks popping up and removing them. So it's more, you have to do it step by step by step. And after each step, you identify what would be the next best opportunity. I think you cannot plan it in advance.
That's a very good point, Thomas, because transformation implies like revolution, big bang. But DevOps seems to emphasize small incremental improvements. So just like the slogan of Nike, hey, just do it, right? Okay.
And the question is, one thing I would like to add, and the question is, and this is the same thing with Scrum transformations. Scrum in itself and DevOps in itself do not have, they are not the reason we do things. They are not the end target or the goal that we try to achieve. They are a means to an end.
That is really revolutionary.
Yeah, and so I would not talk about the DevOps transformation or a Scrum transformation. I would just talk about improving the state of what we do at the moment, and DevOps and Scrum can help us do that.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. A lot of these practices that we discuss, from what I know, is touch in the training that you are shepherding, applying professional Scrum for software development. Can you talk a little bit about that, just in case our viewers, whether the ones watching live right now or the recorded version, would like to attend? I think when I look at scrum.org website, you folks are quite active in this. You have already scheduled a few. But anyway, can you share a little bit to us? What is this training? What do we do in this training? Thomas?
So to make it very brief, what we are trying to do with APS-SD is we are trying to do Scrum in a way that is successful. We are not trying to talk about Scrum, so we do that on the first day, but then we are doing Scrum. And we are trying to tie all these different things that we talked about today, like DevOps, like extreme programming practices, like emergent architecture. We are trying to tie all these different things into that in order to create a done increment regularly and with fun. And therefore, the practical aspect, so the aspect of doing Scrum, has a very high focus in there. 1/3 of the training is doing Scrum and not talking about stuff.
Oh, wow.
And with doing Scrum, Peter, means we are actually building software during the training, and we do it with multiple sprints in the training. So people who say, well, we cannot build a done increment within 2 weeks, that's a too short period of time, come to our training, you will experience how to do it in 2 hours.
That's really revolutionary. in just 1 hour, you can get a releasable increment. That's really cool. Wow, that seems like a really cool training. Should this, you mentioned you're building like actual software instead of Lego blocks, because some Scrum trainings ask you to build Lego cities. Should this make non-software people be intimidated? Should they come, or is this just only for people who write codes?
If they are part of a Scrum team, so if they are part of a software development team using Scrum, they are very welcome. And I think the teams always find ways to maximize and optimize the value that those people, that everybody on the team is able to deliver. Thomas and I, we also think that it's a great place for Scrum Masters and product owners to be, to realize what Scrum with software development means and has as consequences. But that's just us. So Thomas and I, we think it's a great place for everybody to be, but just because we think it's the best place to learn Scrum, to learn about Scrum and how to do Scrum well.
Okay. And I think it is really emphasizing the point, which was one of the changes in the latest Scrum Guide, to more emphasize the idea of the shared responsibility in the whole Scrum team. So it's not a role-specific training for developers. It is a Scrum training in the context of software, teaching teams how collaboratively build great software products. That's what this training is all about, and that's why we think that product owners and Scrum Masters should be part of it. I had the biggest success when I had the whole Scrum team sitting this class, and they, after 3 days of training, they just continued the mode they learned during the training in their real business and just continued doing that because everybody was aware of those ideas. They didn't have to go back to the Scrum Master or to the product owner and tell them about the changes they want to make in their work. So that's the most effective and efficient way I could imagine of improving your way of doing Scrum.
And I would imagine the product owner and the Scrum Master is not technical, would have more empathy towards what the software developers do. That software development is actually hard. It's actually not easy. It's not just as simple as adding one line of code. It takes professionalism to build awesome products. Anyways, it's almost, I think it's already beyond lunchtime at where you are right now, Peter and Thomas. Thank you so much for giving us a shed of lights, lots of insights. I learned a lot from both of you, a lot of mind-blowing moments. So really, thank you, folks. And thank you everyone who has already joined this live stream, or if you are watching the recorded version of this live stream. Thomas and Peter, if our viewers would like to contact you, how can they contact you? How can they reach out to you if they still want to continue the conversation or probably hire you to help their teams to level up the game?
So I think the easiest way to reach both of us is to go to the scrum.org website, search for the trainers. Thomas and my name will pop up, and many great other trainers as well, because it's not only us and it's not about us. And if you want to reach out in person, I speak for Thomas as well. Send us an email, call us. Don't call Thomas. He will not pick up the phone. I will, or you can find me at least on Twitter.
Okay. Okay. So I guess that's been covered. Thank you so much, gents. It's been a great 1 hour additional free learning from me, from both of you. Enjoy the rest of your day. And folks, for those of you who are watching, enjoy the rest of your day wherever you are currently watching today's live stream. Thank you so much. See you until our next live stream, folks. Thank you.
Thanks and bye.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter and Thomas.